There we are. I see 0 people viewing, so I think we're live.
We're live. Fantastic.
0 people. So we're killing it.
We are rocking and rolling.
That means we
welcome.
just went live, probably.
Yeah, we just went live.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes I see people, they're like hanging out for a little bit, playing music until that number starts to climb. But what we will do is we'll jump into our conversation because most people watch these videos, at all different times and hours. And so if you are joining us, welcome to the Speak with People community group. We are so excited that you are a part of this group and you are joining us. I'm joined today by my co-host on the Speak with People podcast, Dennis Poulette.
Hi.
I should have given you that cue. Sorry about that. And I am.
Yes.
And we are also joined by Kevin Stamper. Kevin, welcome.
Hey, great to be here. Yeah, thanks. This will be fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are having a conversation today about our own public speaking skills as a communicator, as a leader. Because some of us, we don't communicate in front of people all that often, but we do have moments when we're called by our boss to give a report or a presentation up front. Sometimes we have to stand up and do a keynote for something. And should we be ready? Is it even worth it for just the average Joe to invest in their public speaking skills? And so I'm so excited to have these guys joining me. Kevin teaches speech. He's done a bunch with Toastmasters. He's a pastor who speaks all the time. He's coached and trained people. And so, Kevin, let's just jump right in. What do you think from your perspective? Is it important for leaders to invest in public speaking skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, yes, it is. I think that one of the things that people overlook, so speaking's it's obviously looked at as a soft skill, right? We don't talk about this in the dollars and cents hard skill, type of mentality. Although I don't know that that's right, because effective communication saves dollars. It actually saves a lot of time. When you think about, because I do believe public speaking specifically is not always the most, it's not always the most effective way of communicating, but it is the most efficient way of communicating. So sometimes the most effective thing is to have a conversation one-on-one. Sometimes the most effective thing is to bring people into a meeting and have a smaller group of things. Sometimes the most effective way is an email or a text. That might be effective, but the efficiency of public speaking is that you can bring a bunch of people into a place and you get one message out to as many people as possible. That's what's great about it. And so it is a mass media form, and that's actually really important. And what happens is when we lose the efficiency of it, when it's not done well, we actually lose dollars and cents. So think about, like, if you're speaking in front of your company, if you're speaking even in front of your team, and you're doing a speech in front of them, think about how many dollars on your payroll are in that room at that moment. This is the most money you've put into any moment. I guarantee you, your staff meeting every week is probably your most expensive hour of your week.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if I get my whole company or a whole organization into a room, think about how much money just went into that room while those people sit there. If I'm paying them all for an hour or 2 hours to sit there and listen and whatever, well, that is highly expensive time.
Yep.
And if I squander that, if I waste that time, if I don't do a good job communicating efficiently and effectively in that room, I've just wasted tons and tons of hours and dollars for that 1 hour that I blew in front of people. So I think people don't see it as they see it as a soft skill, but they need to see that there's dollars and cents attached to it. That there's actually like hard facts that you can come away with that prove that it is an effective and efficient form of communication that needs to be used by every leader.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great thought. I mean, I'm immediately taken to all the episodes of The Office I've watched, and Michael Scott, calling out for yet another staff meeting and everyone rolling their eyes, and Stanley doing his puzzle book, and you're exactly right. I mean, the whole staff is right there. Dennis, what do you think? What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hate meetings, number one, but I do believe that they are efficient, and if they can be efficient, then they're effective, So if
Yeah.
you know what you're talking about and you can communicate clearly, then you're going to be better off having a meeting than you are trying to make 100 phone calls or even emails that can get misinterpreted and all those things. I think too, though, like public speaking, the more you speak publicly in front of people, I think the better you are as a communicator just in general. I don't know about you guys, but like, have you ever said something one on one to somebody that you're like, I just stole that from a talk that I usually give, and I just repeated it again, and and it worked, and it was like, wow, it's because I've synthesized those thoughts in my brain before I had that
That's a good
conversation
point.
that I
Yeah.
could speak effectively about whatever topic it is.
Yeah.
So I
I
think
love
it
that.
adds to your credibility too, because the more you hone those skills, the more you can actually come across as the expert whenever you're in a room talking to 2 to 3 or 4 people,
That's
and you
true.
walk in and you're like, I know what I'm talking about because I've spoken to 100 people about this.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
Yeah. That's true. I was even thinking recently. I went visited a BNI group, BNI, and they were trying to get me to come in and do the whole thing. But you have to be so ready for your 30-second pitch. 30 seconds, who you are, what you do, what services you offer. And I was thinking how incredibly helpful that would be, even to help leaders be able to do a 30-second, because I'm going to get real judgmental here for a second. I've heard so many people that are like, well, I do this and then I do that, and they're looking all over the place, and then they're looking down, and 30 seconds has gone by and they haven't got anywhere near what they needed to communicate, you know.
Mhm.
oh, I've
Even
been
Yeah,
that guy.
absolutely.
oh, I've been that guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you have to be ready for that. I've worked with one specific person that I worked with was a CIA agent who was
Oh.
in the agency, and he came out of the agency, but he had a business and some things he wanted to do outside of that. What I found with him was that he every day, literally every day, he would practice what he would
Mm,
say. So he was like, I might get in an elevator today, and at the time he was like, I might be in an elevator with President Obama today. It was not out of the question,
right.
like where he worked and the people he was around. And he was like, what would I say if I was in an elevator today with President Obama? Like, what would come out of my mouth? And
Wow.
he would practice. If I have
Wow.
30 seconds between this floor and this floor to talk to the president,
Yep.
what am I going to say that's going to matter, that's going to make an impact, that's going to make an impression on him, and that he's going to remember me for? What would be the words I would say? And I think people have to think that way.
Yep.
We don't get a ton of time. And in our attention economy, I don't know if you've noticed or not. In fact, there was a study just recently that Americans have the attention span of 8 seconds right now, and
Jeez.
a goldfish has the attention span of 9 seconds. So goldfish are actually beating us. Like, we're doing worse than
Wow.
goldfish. So like, you got to
So
be ready. You got to be
Ted
able to shut
Lasso's
up.
famous quote worked, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You're like a goldfish. Forget it. You're like a goldfish. Yeah, and we're forgetting things left and right. So yeah, that first impression, that first impact, those first words, they really do matter, and getting that pitch down is really important. That shouldn't just be for the CEO. That should be everybody across the organization. And the best organizations I've worked with are ones where everybody knows the same 30 seconds they're supposed to give.
Mm.
Everybody knows what their role is. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was even thinking not too long ago, I was at a banquet that actually Dennis is on the board for, the West Pasco Pregnancy Center. And they had Benjamin Watson, former NFL player, speak. And Benjamin Watson walks into the room, and this man is just, I mean, not only is he towering, right? But he, from the outside, even before he says something, he's just impressive. You're like, wow, he's an impressive guy. And then immediately when he starts to speak, he was impressive. And that night, I was just thinking to myself, okay, uh, not that it's the only gauge that I want when I come across the people, but I was thinking, okay, do I have that impressive type of, I mean, just, and so even knowing that 30 seconds, how to introduce yourself, and then how to do it in a way that grabs people attention so they go, oh, I want to lean in. I want to learn more about them. I want to look them up on, social later to see what they're like. I mean, it's just so important. And just what you were saying, Kevin, I mean, if everybody knows how to do that, especially for the company that you work for,
Mhm.
I mean, you will really represent that place well.
Yeah, well, it speaks to both the internal and the external communication of the organization, right? So if you can get everybody on the same page, because I've worked for organizations before where my job is to message something or to even be the spokesman for something, which
Mm-hmm.
is very confusing because you're like, large nonprofits, for instance, back in 2016, there was a lot of shifting in nonprofit world, especially with government funding. So they were like, we got to find private donors that are corporate or bigger businesses that we're looking for $5-10 million, lots of money that we need
Wow.
to get from those places. So they would ask me just to come sit in the room while they would pitch a large organization like that, like a big
Wow.
company. And what was weird is like I would just sit there and they'd kind of look at me like when they got in trouble and be like, "Can you say something cool here? Like, come up with something great to say." And I was like, "Well, that's fine, but like, I'm a contractor for you guys. I'm
Right.
not your main, your main sales. I'm not your marketing. I'm not your development team. You need people who can do that on every level of your organization, not just me. Don't just hire me to come do it." And I think we outsource that to communication
Mm.
and think that they're the ones that are supposed to handle it instead of realizing that every one of us are communicators for our organization.
Yep.
Every one of us should be doing that. And so it's great for internal communication when you can do that and create that 30-second, whatever that pitch is, that moment that everybody agrees on and can say, because now they all know what the value of the
Yeah.
organization is and what their value proposition is. But then you're taking that to everybody, right? And now it's also a public facing thing where everybody can articulate that. So I think for the leader to invest in public speaking isn't just about investing in public speaking. It's not just
Mm.
for them to go up and give an hour-long keynote. It's an investment in the 30-second as well.
Yeah.
That I need to know how to message this as effectively and efficiently as possible so that it goes down line through my organization and then up cycles through the organization to the people around us, to the community that we're trying to talk to.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that.
And
Ooh, I love
I
that.
would say too that sometimes it's like principles too. It's not just I have
Mhm.
one message that I'm gonna keep continuing say like because if you're running a business, we have businesses. Jason's got a all of these people that are entrepreneurs. Even you have one main message, but you probably have to say it four different ways or five, multiple ways because of the
Mhm.
different audiences that you have. So you have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to take these principles and be clear in what I'm saying based on who I'm speaking with. So whenever I think, okay, I'm marketing to, if real estate agent, I'm talking to a seller. Well, that's different than talking to a buyer.
Right.
Marketing company, I'm talking to a restaurant. That's different than talking to somebody who has a coaching business. Like those are complete. I'm selling the same product, but I have to market it and package it in different ways because my services are always going to be the same. But when we're trying to learn how to communicate, we have to figure out, okay, these are the principles that I'm going to
Yep.
use, and that's what I've learned a lot from Jason is that Jason takes the clarity box. Jason takes specific ways to think about communicating and helps people be able to plug that into whatever company that they are doing,
Mm.
whatever company they're running or working for, or even a family or a church or an organization.
Mhm.
All of us have different things that we're communicating, but using those principles, I think it's huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. Yeah.
even what you guys were talking about, I think about just even helping people with clarity. Even if
Hmm.
the average leader, say I work, as a project manager for a company or whatever, even if I was able to, be able to be more clear with my communication. I think Dennis, you talked about it earlier. Like when we invest in our public speaking skills, it really does. Some of those habits do help with my clarity, formulating thoughts, being able to communicate something that has a logical progression to it. Because if I mean, we've all been in enough weddings when someone's handed that microphone and they haven't thought through what they're gonna say. Ooh,
Oh, oh, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, again, I think that yeah, there's a lot of things there. I do think that first of all, so there's two things that come to mind. One is that clarity matters, right? So that when you have that moment, this is a hard business decision that the leader needs to be able to communicate clearly to their team. I remember one of the places that I went in to consult not long ago actually was at an Air Force base. So they had they have a guy whose job it is every morning to get up and give a briefing to the organization. So I went in to meet with this guy, and I walk in. First of all, every room I walk in, they would yell code blue through the room, and every computer monitor in front of like every single person's monitor turned blue. They would turn it to blue so that I couldn't see any, classified information or whatever, which in some ways was like a little terrifying. In other ways, I was like, I'm so impressed that you think this much of me that I could do anything with this. Like, it really felt validating. Where I was like, I'm glad that you think so highly of me that I understand anything going on in this room. Because I was lost. I had no idea what's going on. And I went and met with the guy whose job it was to give this briefing. And again, even the military realized that this was one of the most valuable moments of their day every day. And it was not getting communicated clearly enough. They were putting a lot of money into this moment. They were putting a lot of resource into this moment. This was honestly crucial for the entire organization because it was one of the few times where they all stopped and they heard the same thing from the same voice. And the guy he was a fine communicator. He was good, but it was like, we need to do better because this matters. This moment matters. Any organization leader who thinks that it doesn't matter, they're missing out on how critical this can be for them. So I think that matters a lot. The second thing that comes to mind, though, is remember that the communication breeds trust. You will never have trust in somebody until you have communication from them, and you will trust the person who communicates the most with you. I know that sounds crazy, but the person you trust the most is generally the person who communicates with you the most. I don't know what shows you watch, and I'm not going to like endorse necessarily some of these, but like there's some fascinating studies on like shows like Dexter is a good example. If you ever watched Dexter, I know it's a little racy, but it was or like the show You on Netflix is a good case study of this. Ocean's 11 is actually a pretty interesting. So Ocean's 11, remember Ocean's 11?
Oh yeah.
So if you're paying attention to that movie, if you're not familiar with it, we're rooting for George Clooney and his team to rob a casino.
Right.
Because of Julia Roberts being stolen from him. I'm not even really sure what the motivation is, to be honest. And we're like rooting for them, like, do it, take the money. In Dexter, you're rooting for a serial killer. You're actually rooting for, you're like, go kill more people, Dexter. Now, is it because their morals are good? Is it because you agree with their values? Not even necessarily. The reason that you see that main character as the one you root for is because they've communicated the most with you. They let you know the most about them. So even in things where like the darkest character is the one you're rooting for, the reason you're rooting for them is because you know the most about them, because you have communication from them. So there's even a part of just communication that like just people knowing about you will be a huge deal. Even if you're just the one that communicates the most with them, it creates trust. And so if you're not doing that on a consistent basis, you're going to miss out on having trust with the people in your organization.
Yep.
You may think, well, I've done all the right things. I'm the person that they like the most. Why is it that the pastor in your church, if you go to a large church, which I've been a part of many, the pastor in your church who's never spoken a word to you individually, if you walked into that building, who do you trust the most? You trust that pastor the most.
Wow.
Why?
Wow.
Because they just spent 40 minutes a week talking at you.
Yep.
Right? They're the one you have the perceived relationship with. And you don't even know them. You've never had a meal with them. You never had coffee with them. There's a reason that works. And it's a reason that works across organizations. So every leader needs to be invested in that communication skill so that they build trust throughout the entire organization from that point forward.
Yep. Oof. Boy, that's good. That's good. It's so often.
Yeah, that has a lot to say. There's a lot to say about that, about marketing too, whenever it comes to getting the message out, using social media, being that person on camera, being the person in front of people, reminding them of your message and all of that. Interesting. One of our one of our marketing clients is a restaurant, and the owners were out of town. And so on their own personal page, they had put that they were, we're going on vacation, and they were showing all these pictures from vacation and all of this stuff. And so it was hard for us as their marketing people, because people didn't want to go to the restaurant because they thought they were closed.
Oh,
And it was like, no, 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 no. They're not closed. They're still here. Like, the restaurant's still running. But, the more you're out there, I think it does build trust.
Mhm.
People are like, oh, okay, well, we know that we shouldn't go because they're closed, even though we had never said that as the restaurant, the organization. It's like, okay. But I think, if somebody's complaining that you're saying too much, or you're putting out too much marketing material, they're probably wrong, because you do want to build that trust with people. I mean, you don't want to say the same exact thing every single time, but yeah.
That's true. That's true. Early on, I remember when I was a youth pastor in my early 20s, I had multiple people approach me and just say, you don't ever communicate. We don't ever know what's going on. And so our kids don't know. And so I can remember, hearing that a couple of times in my early 20s and then going, okay, guess what? I'm never going to hear that again. So then it became, 10 years later, it was like, okay, for those people who are super involved and engaged, they're like, we know everything that's going on. You're communicating too much. And I'm like, honestly, I'm not going to stop, because, people need to be able to hear that over, and when I do some consulting with churches now in their communication, I'm like, people got to hear it over email. They got to hear it over social media. They got to hear it voice to voice from people, hit them on as many communication angles as you possibly can to build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good. That is so good. Okay, let's just wrap up the conversation. This has been so huge. We've hit some really good stuff. Maybe even personally, with some tools that we've used to invest in our own public speaking, our own, effective communication, whether it be courses or classes or, mentors or whatever it is. Would love to know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways to invest in public speaking. Obviously, if if you're afraid of it, and that's where most people start, right? There's always going to be a stigma or a fear around it. So if that's the fear that you have, then I would encourage you. First of all, you you can get better. I think everybody thinks that you're either born a public speaker or you're not, and that's ridiculous. You can get better. You will get better if you invest the time in it. So you have to think about time in and what your time into it looks like. If you need a coach, I mean, Jason's a great coach. Find a coach. Find somebody who can instill that some of the core principles in you. But then the other thing is, you just got to try it. You just got to do it. And whether it means like you get uncomfortable and it's a little bit awkward for a little bit, that's fine. Most audiences, I find, are always more forgiving than you think they are. I've never met anybody who has a tougher crowd or tougher critics in a crowd than the critic they are of themselves. We're always a tougher critic of, like, I'm a harder critic on me than anybody has ever been of me. Nobody's ever come to me and said the things that I think about myself, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have a kinder audience than you think. Take that, like, run with that. I did Toastmasters. You can do something like that, a club like that somewhere that's like a good. It's a cheap entry to just like be a part of something, get your feet wet a little bit. You can try something like that, but even just don't just be the only one in the journey either. I would say make sure that your team. So if you're a high level leader, go on the journey with your team. Bring your team along, and then you're all speaking and you're learning from each other as you do it. And so it's not just you. It's not like you're the only one who has to go learn how to do this, because your whole team should know how.
Yep.
So take your team along on that. I see a lot of great models in that in the church right now, where churches are moving towards, team teaching, and they're trying to get more than just one communicator up there every week or through the month. And so they're taking their team with them. Like, we all got to get better at this. And we're critiquing each other. We're learning from each other. And so that way you're giving good feedback loops and you're learning how to do this better and better. So don't think it's an individual journey. It's not. It really won't be. Somebody has to be there to give you good feedback. Somebody has to be there to listen to you and pay attention. So take those people with you on the journey as you go through it. But yeah, I would say invest the time that it's going to take to get better at that.
That's good. Dennis, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I mean, I think just being observant helps you become a better communicator. Also, like, I don't necessarily always know what a good speech or sermon or talk is, but I know what it's not. I know what doesn't hold my attention. So making a little bit of a, taking a little tweak to what you do whenever you listen to somebody who's speaking or watch a video on YouTube, those are the things that I've done, is just kind of, hey, what makes a good video? What keeps
Yeah.
my attention? What is Mr. Beast doing? That's what I try to, I'm like,
right.
oh man, I see that he does this, and this, and now I'm going to try that. And, I think those are the things that I do. Just kind of, I've learned that the more observant I am, the better I can improve in anything. If I watch somebody fix a car, I still can't fix a car, but I can at least act like I know what I'm talking about whenever I go to the mechanic.
Right.
And so the mechanic will stop, trying to rip me off, maybe.
Yeah.
If I'm lucky.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think too, especially for the leader who may not get up in front of people all that often, they're a little nervous, even making some investments, reading articles. I mean, going to YouTube University, for Pete's sakes, and just type in how to become a better speaker. Even that investment is just going to help your confidence. It's going to help your clarity. You're going to be ready. What if your boss does call upon you? What if I do need to do, what do I got to do better to do in the sales presentation? And so I think it's huge. I'm excited because Speak with People, you'll find out tons more about this in the weeks to come. But we're launching our first course called The Pathway, which we just say is a step-by-step guide to becoming a more confident, clear, and captivating communicator. So I want to have this conversation today just to kind of start priming the pump and to get ready for the launch of that. But then also in this Facebook group, we're just trying to always add value to everyone who's a part so we can continue to grow together. So Kevin, Dennis, thank you so much for your time today, being a part of this conversation. And thank you to everyone who joined and will join in the future. So thanks again. And we'll see you next time when we jump on.
Thank you, guys.